If you're in that phase of life where you thought things might get a little quieter, a little more peaceful, but instead you find you're the one constantly soaking up the stress of your adult children, your siblings, your friends, then this explainer is absolutely for you. We are going to dive into something that so many people feel but almost nobody talks about. Together, we're going to give it a name, figure out where it comes from, and most importantly, we're going to map out a clear, practical way for you to get your energy back, to get your peace of mind back.
So let's just start with this core truth right here. Just take a second and let that sink in. Does that sound familiar? For so many, this isn't just a quote, it's their day-to-day reality. That loving, guiding role you always pictured for yourself has somehow, quietly, morphed into this high-stress, unpaid, and incredibly draining job. You've become the family's default crisis hotline, the 24/7 support line for pretty much everyone. And if you're feeling completely overwhelmed by it all, I really need you to hear this. Right at the beginning, you are not alone in this, and it is not a personal failing.
Okay, so let's get into the why. Why does this happen? In this first part, we're really going to unpack that. We're going to look at the huge difference between offering that sustainable, loving support and accidentally slipping into a state of just chronic burnout. And look, this has nothing to do with loving your family any less. It's about understanding the hidden dynamics that can turn that beautiful love into a completely impossible burden. This right here, this gives a name to what you've been feeling: senior emotional labor. And I want you to notice, this isn't about you being too sensitive or getting over-involved. It's a structural issue. And that word, structural, that is everything. It means the problem isn't some flaw inside of you. It's in the role that you've been quietly pushed into. When you become the constant shock absorber for everyone else's stress, their anxiety, their daily dramas, you're performing labor. It's just invisible. It's unpaid. And it leads directly to this deep down mental and emotional exhaustion that's, well, it's really hard to put your finger on.
So why is it so incredibly draining? Let's dig into that a little more. Because we have to understand the roots of this burnout. They aren't personal, they are systemic. And just recognizing the structure behind the feeling, that is the absolute first step toward taking its power away and starting to protect your own well-being.
And this slide, wow, this just illustrates the whole thing perfectly. You see, in psychology, there's this life stage called generativity. And all that is that natural, healthy, really fulfilling desire to guide and support the next generation. On the left, you see what it's supposed to look like. It's healthy. It's a two-way street. It actually gives you energy. But what many of you are probably experiencing is what's on the right, the generativity crisis. Your natural desire to help, it's being exploited. It's not a back and forth exchange anymore. It has become a one-way drain. This is what we call unilateral emotional labor, and it is the fast track to complete and utter mental weariness. So how in the world did this even happen? Well, a few big shifts create this perfect storm. First, for a lot of people, retirement means you lose that external workplace buffer. Your job gave you structure, a different identity, a place where you weren't just mom or grandpa. And when that's gone, your family role can just expand to fill all that space. Second, there's this subtle perception from other people, and maybe even from yourself, that you now have infinite time and infinite emotional capacity. And so you become the family's emotional bank. You're always open, the vault is always full, and you're just ready for constant withdrawals. The devastating result of that? A chronic depletion of your executive function. Think of that as your brain's CEO. It's the part that helps you plan, focus, and manage your own feelings. You start to feel foggy, you can't make decisions, you get irritable, because your core mental resources are being constantly overdrawn.
All right, we've defined the problem. We've looked at its roots. Now we're going to pivot to the solution. And every single bit of it, starts with you internalizing one foundational, non-negotiable truth. This is truly the single most powerful lesson you can take away from our time together today.
Let's just let that sit there for a second. Emotional capacity is finite. It is not some bottomless well that can never run dry. It's a battery, and it can be completely, totally drained. I mean, you would never expect your phone to just run forever without recharging it, right? You wouldn't expect your car to run on an empty tank of gas. Well, your emotional energy is exactly the same. Recognizing and respecting that limit, that isn't selfish. It is the fundamental requirement for your own health and, as we're about to see, for the long-term health of your relationships, too.
Okay, so if our capacity is finite, what do we do about it? How do we manage it? Well, we need a system. And this is where we introduce something called the Reciprocity Protocol. The word protocol is very intentional. It's not just a vague idea, it is a structured plan. And the word reciprocity? Well, that's its heart and soul. This is all about restoring balance and creating a plan for support that is truly sustainable for you and for everyone else.
Now, this protocol, it rests on two incredibly powerful pillars. First up, the time limit mandate. This is all about containment. You have to put a container around these draining conversations to stop the endless flow of your energy out the door. The second pillar is just as crucial, the shift from fixer to validator. Look, your job is not to solve everyone else's problems. Trying to do that is exhausting for you, and honestly, it's kind of disempowering for them. Your new role is simply to listen and to validate their feelings. What that does is it places the responsibility for actually solving the problem back where it belongs, with the person who owns the problem.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But the question I'm sure you're asking is, how? How do I actually do this? How do I put this stuff into practice without starting a big fight, without hurting anyone's feelings, and in a way that actually works and feels like me?
Let's get really practical. Here are 4 concrete steps you can literally start using today. First, you're going to institute the 15-minute timer rule. You can even say it out loud, something like, "Honey, I have 15 minutes right now where I can give this my full focus." Second, start developing your listener/validator script. Instead of jumping in with advice, you're going to practice phrases like, "Wow, that sounds incredibly stressful," or "I can really hear how difficult that must be for you." You're giving empathy, not solutions. Third, when that timer goes off, you practice the positive redirect. Gently change the subject. "Thank you for sharing that with me. Now, hey, tell me about that new book you're reading." And fourth, define your emotional autonomy zones. These are scheduled times in your day, in your week, that are non-negotiable. This time is for you to read a book, to take a walk, to do absolutely nothing at all. This is you intentionally recharging your battery.
You know, it is so easy to hear that word boundaries and think of walls or pushing people away, right? But I want us to completely reframe that. Let's shift our whole perspective here and start to see boundaries not as rejection, but as the highest, most sustainable form of love for your family and for yourself.
So here's the bottom line. Protecting your emotional reserves is the very thing that allows you to continue being a loving, wise, and steady presence in their lives. Think about it. When you're completely burned out, you become resentful, irritable, maybe a little withdrawn. You can't offer your best self to anyone. By setting these boundaries, you are ensuring that the support you give comes from a place of fullness, not a place of depletion. You are protecting your ability to love them for the long haul. That is sustainable generativity.
We have covered a lot of ground here, from really understanding the core problem to outlining a structured solution. Now, it's about action. But, and this is important, we are not going to try and change everything all at once. That would just be overwhelming. The real goal here is to take one small, powerful, and totally achievable step forward.
Just one. That's it. That is all we are focusing on right now. The idea of setting a bunch of new boundaries with everybody all at once, it's just daunting. So we're not going to do that. We're going to start with one person, one relationship, one conversation. The real power is in starting small, proving yourself that you can do it, and then building your confidence from there.
So here it is, your first action. Right now, I want you to think of the one person in your life who most frequently over-relies on you emotionally. Just get them in your mind. Now just make a quiet commitment to yourself that the very next time they come to you with one of those problem-focused discussions, you will gently implement the 15-minute timer rule. That's it. That is your single, powerful first step toward getting your energy back.
As we close out, let's just bring this all together. Remember, first and foremost, that feeling of emotional depletion. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a failure on your part. It is the logical result of a pattern of one-sided support that has been constantly draining your finite mental energy. Your emotional energy is a precious, limited resource. It is not only your right, but it is your responsibility to protect it.
And protecting that resource doesn't require some big, dramatic confrontation. It just requires a new structure. And the two most powerful tools you have in your toolkit now are the simple changes we've talked about. The 15-minute rule puts a container around the conversation, and that intentional shift from being the fixer to being the validator, that's what restores the healthy balance of reciprocity to your relationships.
And finally, just let this thought be your guide. This was never about pulling away from the people you love. It's about preserving your ability to be fully present with them. True self-care is the key to sustained wisdom and presence. It's what ensures that your love, which is your greatest gift, remains a source of strength for your family and not the source of your own exhaustion. Thank you for taking this time for yourself today.